I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, lawsuits and language. Pro-abortion groups are targeting a proposed phrase in a constitutional amendment in Ohio. Cost of medicine. President Joe Biden says he's taking action to lower the price of prescription drugs. We're at the White House. Something to talk about. A look into a magazine for women focused on beauty and truth. And call to forgiveness. A closer look at the end of an annual celebration in Italy. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the feast of the beheading of St. John the Baptist. Our top story tonight, a pro-life lawmaker on Capitol Hill announced that he is battling blood cancer. Catholic Congressman Steve Scalise was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, a cancer of the bone marrow plasma cells. A long-serving Republican from Louisiana is the current majority leader in the House. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with more. Eric?
Yes, good evening, Tracy. You know, the sad news broke early this morning. Congressman Steve Scalise had been hospitalized for several days after falling ill on the campaign trail. He says that his form of blood cancer is treatable. However, his treatment could last several months. I reached out to his office. The majority leader issued a statement which says in part, quote, "I expect to work through this period and intend to return to Washington, continuing my work as majority leader and serving the people of Louisiana's 1st Congressional District. I will tackle this with the same strength and energy as I had tackled past challenges." You may recall in 2017, Congressman Scalise was one of the victims of a shooting as Republican lawmakers were practicing for the annual congressional baseball game. He underwent numerous surgeries and nearly died. I spoke with Congressman Scalise after he returned to Congress. He said his Catholic faith helped him through the ordeal.
The only reason that not only me but everybody else on that ball field is alive today is because God was on that field performing miracles. I had to learn how to walk again, and God gave me the strength to do all of that, to overcome those challenges and to not look back with bitterness, because I really don't have that. I feel just lucky, not anything else, and that's because of my strong faith.
Since today's news broke, well wishes and prayers are pouring in. Republican Conference Chair Congresswoman Elise Stefanik says, quote, "There is no stronger fighter than Majority Leader Steve Scalise. Steve is as tough and kind as they come, and he has beaten so many unbeatable odds." U.S. Senator and Dr. Bill Cassidy wrote, quote, "I join with so many others in prayer for Steve and his family. The same faith, family support, and internal strength that has made Steve such an inspiration to others after he was shot will bring him through this illness and once more inspire us all." It is important to note that years ago, the prognosis for this type of cancer was not good. However, decades of research, survival rates have improved considerably, and new targeted therapies are being developed each year. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy said anyone who knows Steve knows that he is a faith-filled fighter. McCarthy also invites everyone in the nation to keep Steve and his family in prayer. Tracy?
And we are certainly doing that. Thank you so much, Eric. Well, now to Florida. Tonight, the Biden administration is closely monitoring Hurricane Idalia. The storm will soon make landfall with a large stretch of Florida's Gulf Coast expected to be impacted. Officials from FEMA are asking all Floridians to be vigilant and heed the warnings of local officials. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening to you. Tonight, the director of FEMA warns this storm could be deadly and urges people to check on their neighbors who might need help.
Hurricane Idalia from space. Much of Florida in disaster mode, preparing for an onslaught. And speaking from the state's Emergency Operations Center, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis warns
this is going to be a major hurricane, likely a Category 3.
And in the White House press briefing room this afternoon, the director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency steps to the podium.
I know that the people of Florida are no stranger to storms, and I encourage all Floridians to take this storm seriously.
Storm surge among the chief concerns.
This storm is very strong and is expected to strengthen to a major hurricane by the time it makes landfall due to high surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico. This means heavy winds, high winds, heavy rain, and a forecasted 12-foot storm surge in some of the areas along the western coast.
Meanwhile, drug prices. President Joe Biden in the East Room of the White House announces his administration is targeting 10 medications, including Eliquis, Jardiance, Xarelto, and Januvia, for Medicare's first ever drug price negotiations. Prices will be negotiated directly with the manufacturer.
For years, Big Pharma blocked us. They kept prescription drug prices high to increase their profits, to extend patents on existing drugs to suppress fair competition.
The move is expected to cut costs for many patients.
I promise you, I'm going to have your back, and I'll never stop fighting for you on this issue, nor will Kamala.
But critics of the move say companies might pull back on introducing new drugs, and significant rebates and discounts already exist. Any negotiated prices won't take hold until 2026.
Also tonight, the Biden administration announcing it's sending more ammunition, mine-clearing equipment, and missiles to Ukraine as it continues fighting Russia. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Pro-abortion activists are filing a lawsuit over language in a proposed constitutional amendment in Ohio. The amendment on whether to include abortion in the state constitution features the phrase unborn child. Abortion supporters say when they gathered signatures to include the measure in the ballots this fall, they used the term fetus. More than a dozen states and a number of pro-life groups are asking the Supreme Court to weigh in on so-called buffer zones around abortion clinics. The case involves a Catholic woman banned from offering counseling outside of an abortion business in New York. Texas, Alabama, and Missouri are among the states signed onto a brief saying they support free speech outside of abortion businesses. And joining us now is Andrea Picciotti-Bayer, EWTN legal analyst and religious freedom expert. Andrea, always so good to be with you. Let's start off talking about this case and the significance of it, especially since so many states and organizations joined the amicus brief.
Well, Tracy, thanks so much for having me on. It's always great to join you. I think this is a really important case because it is going to be a marker for post-Roe America. For so many years, the Supreme Court has kind of been handicapped because of Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey in trying to manage other important constitutional rights that are specifically mentioned in the Constitution, like free speech. This case in the lower courts was bound by some precedent that was in the year 2000, where there was allowing state laws and local laws to create a buffer or a bubble around abortion facilities where people wouldn't be able to communicate and interact as normal free Americans can do. Now the court is going to be able to, if they choose to take up this case, revisit that issue and hopefully recenter back in the important free speech rights that are part of our American tradition.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you that, Andrea. I mean, what type of impact do you think this will have on the Supreme Court, that is, and for them to take action?
You know, I think that the Supreme Court is very attentive to what's happening after its Dobbs decision and revisiting issues. Already Supreme Court justices have commented that they thought that that 2000 decision that this case was governed by was incorrectly decided, and they're interested in righting the wrong that was done in that case. I think it's also an important indicator for how important it is that we continue to push for creating a culture of life. So even beyond the legal issues involved, the ability to meet people where they are, especially if they're considering issues of pursuing an adoption, that oftentimes is best met with a loving word and a kind direction to alternatives to the gruesome act of aborting their own child.
Yeah, I want to turn to another case now in Montgomery County, Maryland, where people from many different faiths filed a lawsuit against the school district because they wanted to opt their children out of the LGBTQ curriculum. Tell us more about that and where things stand right now.
You know, Tracy, this is a really exciting case. This is an across-the-board response of parents in Montgomery County, Maryland, just a stone's throw away from our nation's capital, who have objected to the inclusion of a series of books called an inclusivity series that addresses issues of same-sex attraction, gender identity, and different issues related to human sexuality into the youngest students, pre-K through 8th grade. The parents just want to exercise their right to opt their children out of being exposed to those series of books, and the school board in Montgomery County has refused to allow them to exercise that right. The parents lost in the lower courts, and just yesterday, Beckett Law, representing this group of parents, filed an appeal to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. I think that their case is strong, and I think that we're going to be seeing more and more cases like theirs across the country as more and more parents get interested in what's going on in the classrooms and exercising their rights as parents.
Yeah, we're going to keep an eye on that case for sure. Before I let you go, we have a minute or so left, Andrea. But another case that's garnering a lot of attention involves Southwest Airlines requiring their lawyers taking religious freedom training after firing a pro-life employee. What is the latest on that, and also the larger implications of this case as it relates to corporate America?
You know, Tracy, I think it's very interesting. The lawyers representing Southwest Airlines were given a directive from the district court judge, Starr, to make sure that their employees knew that they're protected against religious discrimination. And this was in the context of a case where a woman was fired for expressing her pro-life positions and opposing the airline's reimbursement for employees in the union who had attended a pro-abortion protests here in Washington. Those lawyers failed to take the directive of the judge seriously. Instead of reminding the employees of their religious freedom rights, just said, make sure that we're all very civil together. And the judge had no other recourse but to order them to go back to school and ordered them to take religious freedom training, directing it to be provided by Alliance Defending Freedom, which is a very successful Christian religious liberty law firm. It's unique. It's a unique order. But in looking at the history of this case, you can really see that the judge was very frustrated with the failure of the airline's lawyers to follow his rules. And sometimes you just need to go back to basics.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much for coming on today. Always appreciate your insights. Really important. God bless.
Thanks, Tracy.
And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including taken away reaction from Nicaragua after the government closes a Catholic university, and Turning the Page, a magazine that says it offers beauty and truth for girls and women. Poll finds around 2/3 of people in the United Kingdom are in favor of legalizing assisted suicide. The study comes as lawmakers there debate a measure that would legalize euthanasia. Church teaching says that doctor-assisted killing is, quote, intrinsically evil. Well, graduates of the recently closed Catholic University in Nicaragua say the school transformed their lives, with one saying that it was the last place for independent thought in the Central American nation. Another graduate said that she started crying when she heard the Ortega regime had confiscated the school. The university was founded by the Jesuits in 1960. It was known for fighting authoritarians. The government closed it, saying that it housed terrorists. While supporters of former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan are celebrating the news that his 3-year prison term has been suspended.
हाई कोर्ट ने बहुत ही अच्छा फैसला किया कि इमरान खान को रिहा किया उन्होंने.
The legal victory was welcomed by his supporters and members of his family. The former cricket star remains popular in Pakistan. However, the 70-year-old is expected to be retried on the corruption charges, which he strongly denies. Well, according to a recent study, N95 surgical masks, specifically KF94 medical masks used for protection against the coronavirus, may expose people to dangerous levels of toxic chemicals. Researchers in South Korea found the chemical released by those masks had 8 times the recommended safety limit of toxic compounds. The study was published in the journal Ecotoxicology and Environmental Safety and on the National Institutes of Health website. We go now to Brittany Martinez, co-founder of Evie Magazine, which has been reporting on the COVID-19 pandemic from the beginning. Brittany, great to be with you. Thanks so much for coming on. A lot to discuss here, but first, I want to get your thoughts on that study.
Well, it's actually funny you say that. Rolling Stone actually did this really hilarious hit piece on us a few months ago. And one of the pieces I had an issue with was a piece we did on are masks making people meaner. So it came out, obviously that masks haven't worked as well as people thought they did. And now, like, obviously with the paper straws, you're like absorbing more toxins. With the mask, you're absorbing more toxins. Like, it's not necessarily healthy for you, but people, bought into it. And now it's like people are having all these health issues that could have been prevented.
Yeah, and I know that you say that you strive to back your editorial decisions with science and sound data, but as you mentioned, I mean, you did receive some criticism for your reporting. Why do you think that is, and what articles in particular spark controversy?
We did a piece on the vaccine influencing women's menstrual cycles, which at the time was this whole conspiracy theory. But, with science, you want hypotheses, you want to try to prove it. The science is constantly changing. And now it's come to fruition that the vaccine was actually influencing women's menstrual cycles. So we've actually been right about pretty much everything we report on with COVID. The lockdowns had little to no effect. We were the only women's magazine that I'm aware of that wasn't supporting the lockdowns from the beginning. And now we've seen a rise in depression, suicide, and all these mental health issues that we were hoping wouldn't end up happening that ended up happening.
Yeah, and you don't report just on COVID or the pandemic. Let's talk a little bit more about the magazine. It really is really different from most women's magazines. Talk to us more about that and how you are differentiating yourselves, and also why you call your publication The Future of Femininity.
Thank you so much for that. Well, for decades, women have been sold countless lies through the media, through magazines, through TV shows, Netflix, that they should just be taking the birth control pill without knowing about the side effects. They should engage in casual sex and hookup culture. They should be more like a man, put their career first, not care about having kids. And now women are more depressed and medicated than ever before in human history. So we want women to actually celebrate their femininity and give them the guidance to actually have happiness in a fulfilling life, which is what mainstream media said they would do under the guise of empowerment, but obviously it's unfortunately not the case.
Brittany, can you tell us, what your magazine offers that, say, other mainstream women's magazines don't?
We're always going to be truthful with you. Like, our magazine strives to promote truth and beauty. So right now there's been this whole issue of kind of this era of ugliness, this era of your truth, but not actually the truth. So no matter what, we want to strive to give women truth and beauty because we truly believe this can change the world.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit more about that. I mean, why specifically was this magazine founded?
We were founded because there was no other alternative for women. Like, women want emotional fulfillment and happiness, and there was no other publication saying, hey, it's okay if you want to be a mom, like, be a mom. Like, there was no other publication that is making monogamy look cool, making marriage look attractive. Everything's, into hookup culture or like do what thou wilt. It's not actually benefiting women. So we wanted to create a change in that way.
Yeah, and Brittany, I know that you guys have actually received a lot of pushback because of that. Talk to us about that.
About what specifically?
About some people saying that you are spreading disinformation about different subjects, and maybe you're far right on some of the issues.
Oh, yeah. Well, our magazine isn't political at all. We're a lot more cultural. I don't think if you want to go to politics, go to a political site. But, now with the internet, it's like you're far right, whatever, if you work out, if you want to be healthy, if you say obesity isn't good for you, it's like a far right position. So I don't know. Everything is far right, apparently.
Brittany, talk to us about maybe some of the projects that you're working on right now for the magazine. I mean, where do you see it going in the future?
Yeah, right now we have subscriptions. So obviously, if you like us and support us, we'd love for you to subscribe. We have a print issue that we come out with yearly. It's really beautiful. It's more like a coffee table type book. And we're planning the current 2023 print issue, which should be out in the next couple of months. So I'm excited about that.
Great. What else would you like people to know about the magazine?
I would say go to eviemagazine.com, subscribe, let us know your thoughts. We love to hear your thoughts. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Most of our readers, I believe over 70% reported living a happier life after reading Evie Magazine. So I hope that more women read it and get inspired to live happier, more fulfilling lives.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. Brittany, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it. God bless.
God bless. Thank you so much.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, pushing back why some are criticizing Pope Francis after his meeting with Russian youth. Plus, a centuries-old celebration wraps up in Italy. We'll explain. Francis is being criticized for remarks that he made recently to young people in Russia. In a video message on Friday, the Holy Father told the young people they are heirs of the great Russia of saints and kings. Leaders in Ukraine immediately criticized the comments. Never forget the legacy. That's what the Pope said at the end of his address to a large group of young Russian people last Friday on the occasion of the 10th National Meeting of Catholic Youth of Russia in St. Petersburg. You are the heirs of great Russia, the Pope declared. Great Russia of saints, rulers, great Russia of Peter I, Catherine II, that empire, great enlightened, of great culture and great humanity. The Vatican released the text of the address on Saturday, but did not include the last improvised paragraph. A video of the Pope making the comments was posted by religious websites and immediately sparked sharp reactions from political and religious leaders in Ukraine. It is precisely with such imperialistic propaganda, the spiritual ties, and the need to save Great Mother Russia that the Kremlin justifies the killing of thousands of Ukrainians and the destruction of Ukrainian cities and villages, Oleg Nikolenko, spokesperson for the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry, said on Facebook. At the same time, the head of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church issued a statement noting the pain and disappointment caused by the Pope's remarks and calling for the Holy See to clarify Pope Francis's comments to avert any manipulation of the intentions, context, and statements assigned to the Holy Father. The Apostolic Nuncio, the Vatican Embassy in Ukraine, released a statement yesterday denying that the Pope encouraged young Russian Catholics to draw inspiration from historical Russian figures known for imperialistic and expansionist ideas and actions. It added Pope Francis has never endorsed imperialistic notions. This morning, the Vatican issued a statement through the Holy Father's spokesperson, Matteo, who said the Pope intended to encourage young people to preserve and promote what is positive in Russia's great cultural and spiritual heritage, and certainly not to glorify imperialistic logics and governmental personalities. Pope Francis has repeatedly criticized the Russian invasion of Ukraine, calling for an end to the conflict. And in the last months, a peace envoy, Cardinal Matteo Zuppi, was sent by the Holy Father to Ukraine, Russia, and the United States to facilitate peace talks. And finally tonight, a centuries-old tradition wraps up today in Italy. The two-day event at the end of August is based in a town around 70 miles from Rome. It is focused on the message of forgiveness and a reminder that with mercy, the life of every person can be lived with joy. The initiative began in the year 1294. Last year, Pope Francis participated in the event. EWTN Vatican journalist Matteo Ciofi has more.
In a tradition that is now 729 years old, on the evening of August 29th, La Perdonanza Celestiniana, the Celestinian pardon, came to a close in L'Aquila, a city in central Italy about 60 miles to the east of the Vatican. The Celestinian pardon, or forgiveness, is a plenary indulgence granted in 2094 by Pope Saint Celestine V for those who, having sincerely repented and confessed, enter the Church of Santa Maria di Colle Maggio from Vespers on the eve of the feast of St. John until Vespers immediately following the feast, that is from Vespers on August 28 to Vespers the following evening on August 29th. The Perdonanza is accompanied every year by festivities, but at its heart is the invitation of Saint Celestine V to conversion, reconciliation and forgiveness.
C'era tutto da ricostruire. Le case, le scuole, le chiese.
Pope Francis took part in the celebration of the Celestinian pardon last year when he traveled to L'Aquila, met with surviving families of a terrible earthquake in 2009 that damaged the cathedral, and then made his way to the town's Basilica of Santa Maria di Colle Maggio, where he celebrated an outdoor Mass, recited the Angelus, and opened the Basilica's Holy Door. He became the first Pope in history to open the Holy Door. At the end of the day's events, the Holy Father prayed before the relics of Celestine V, paying homage to the Pope of Forgiveness who chose to resign the papacy in 1294, only months after his election. Pope Benedict XVI also visited L'Aquila in April 2009 after the devastating earthquake. During his visit, he went to the small village of Onna and then Colle Maggio to pray before the remains of Pope Celestine V, placing there in homage the pallium that was given to him at the beginning of his pontificate 4 years before. Pope Benedict, of course, himself resigned the papacy in February 2013. In Rome, Matteo Ciofi, EWTN News Nightly.
And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, now known as X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.